Hello everyone, if you missed the last video talking about my top 10 rarest roller coaster credits, go check that out first before watching this one. 2 years ago, I put out a video ranking my 15 rarest roller coaster credits. At the time, I had been on 447 different roller coasters. Now, I've been on 791. So clearly it was time for an update, also because I didn't like how I structured that list. There's two very different ways you can measure a rare roller coaster, either based on its geographic location, or unreliability, or some other factor that determines how little coverage it gets as a result, or the type of ride it is and how little that coaster model has been produced. As I stated earlier, we dove deep into the former topic in the last video. This one will focus on unique coasters by its model, genre, and elements. Now, sure, there's a handful of coasters that are rare as a result of both of these things, but I meticulously chose 10 unique coasters that most accurately fit each list. Then, after looking over the top 10, I decided to extend this one to 15 different coasters because there are so many rides I've been on that I found interesting enough to talk about. So now that we have that out of the way, let's dive into my top 15 most unique roller coasters I've ever ridden. Number 15, Switchback at ZDT's Amusement Park in Seguin, Texas. This is the only traditional wooden roller coaster to make my list, but having said that, there's an element on this ride that makes it not so traditional at all. Switchback is the only wooden shuttle coaster ever built, meaning partway through you travel up a vertical spike and do everything in reverse. It's really helped to put this tiny park on the map, and if you're visiting one of the nearby cities of San Antonio or Austin, I'd certainly recommend a visit. Number 14, Wicked at Lagoon in Farmington, Utah. Manufacturer Zero isn't known for their thrilling roller coasters, but throughout their existence they have built two tower coasters, the tower element of which being a vertical climb and vertical descent. However, unlike Impulse at Knoebels, which is this coaster's sister attraction, Wicked has a launch up to the top, and I can honestly say that I've never experienced another element like that. Not only is that one of my all-time favorite launches, but the rest of the ride is quite fun too. Definitely my second favorite roller coaster at Lagoon. Number 13, Sandblasting Bronco at Nickelodeon Universe in East Rutherford, New Jersey. You'll notice with a couple rides on this list that these coasters can be so unique and daring that they're pretty unreliable as a result. I think Sandy's is a primary example of that because Intamin had never really done a ride in this style before. We've seen premier rides succeed in the compact launch coaster market with the Skyrocket 2, and SNS has dabbled into that with Gale Force, but what makes Sandy's different from these is it's got a turntable. This not only looks awesome from off-ride, but it allows riders to take all of this coaster's elements forwards and backwards. It's a really excellent ride actually, and I wish more people were able to get on it. Number 12, Lisberg Banshee at Lisberg in Gothenburg, Sweden. In the 1980s, when ride manufacturer Schwarzkopf went bankrupt, they got into contact with the aforementioned Zero and had them finish building a few of their roller coasters. The two rides that were like this that remain are Jetline at Gronelund, which suffered a very unfortunate accident last year, and so the future of that attraction is still up in the air right now. The other one is Lisberg Banshee, which people will tell you is the much more impressive coaster anyway. So much so that Pontus of Lisberg told us that it was Anton Schwarzkopf's favorite coaster he ever designed. I can understand why too. The ride is so much fun flying down big drops and twists that were creatively built into the terrain. As a result, it might actually be my favorite Schwarzkopf coaster as well. Number 11, Crazy Dane Coaster at Scandia Family Fun Center in Sacramento, California. This is one of those rides that I knew probably wouldn't be that great, but because of how obscure and unique it is, it was always on my bucket list. Manufacturer E&F typically sticks to kids coasters with a handful of exceptions, but one of their largest attractions, Crazy Dane Coaster, turned out to be their only ever attempt at a Wild Mouse. Now to me, it sort of feels like the same model as their High Milers, with a layout that resembles a Wild Mouse, and for all I know that could technically be true. In that case, it'd be the elements that count, and once you get past the boring hairpin turns, the rest of the ride is a janky riot that I thought was much better than I expected. So if you're into weird roller coasters, be sure to tack Scandia onto your next Northern California trip. Number 10, Storm the Dragon Legend at Tusenfryd in Vinterbro, Norway. After finding success in their Infinity and Eurofighter coasters, Gerstlauer took that concept and put trains beneath the track rather than above it. Similar elements, but a completely new feel, and I couldn't wait to experience it on my most recent trip to Europe. Since it was a prototype attraction, it's definitely been prone to some issues, and I was literally one day away from missing out on it altogether. But I'm so glad I got my rides in because although Storm has its flaws, it's overall a very good attraction and without a doubt my favorite roller coaster at this park. Number 9, Tornado at Bakken in Klampenborg, Denmark. Intamin has only ever built 2 spinning coasters, and until 2023, this was the only one they'd done. But that's not really why I have it on this list. Many other manufacturers have built spinning coasters like this. It's because of Tornado's way of starting things out. You have a chain lift that goes so fast, it's considered a launch. I've really never seen that before on any other roller coaster, and I hope it's what Lightning Rod ends up with when it reopens this year because it was a blast to ride. If that wasn't enough, Tornado has a rideable setting called Boost Mode where, among other things, the chain launch is sped up. When you get to the top, it feels like your neck is about to snap off, and I'm surprised that's considered a safe experience for riders. But the diehard enthusiast in me absolutely loves it. Number 8, Volcano the Blast Coaster at Kings Dominion in Doswell, Virginia. I don't think there's a defunct roller coaster that is more missed than Volcano the Blast Coaster. It's one of those examples of an ambitious concept that unfortunately resulted in significant unreliability and, in this case, a lifespan cut short. Using a significant amount of electricity to launch trains beneath the track, something that had never been done before, Volcano was a very unique experience. Then you factor in the park's efforts to theme it with that big artificial volcano, and that's just the cherry on top. I wish there was a way to save this coaster, but nonetheless, I'm glad I was able to get my one ride in 2018. Number 7, Vliegende Hollander at Efteling in Kaatsheuvel, Netherlands. There's a reason Coomback hasn't built many attractions over the years. They have one of the worst track records of any ride company out there, and this wasn't widely known when Efteling contracted them to build Vliegende Hollander, the first roller coaster they'd build entirely on their own. Or so we thought. The project ended up being such a disaster that Efteling had to get Intamin to finish it. Luckily, Vliegende Hollander did end up quite amazing, but it's not because of the coaster sections done by Coomback. That stuff honestly kinda sucks. It's entirely thanks to the theming done by the park, meaning I credit Efteling specifically with how good this ride actually is. Good on them for taking what would otherwise be a lackluster water coaster and turning it into a world-class dark ride. Number 6, Merlins Mayhem at Dutch Wonderland in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. S&S Worldwide has many different coaster models in their catalog, but many of them resulted in one-off sales. Merlins Mayhem is a perfect example, as it's the only family inverted coaster they've ever done, and really the only time they've placed trains beneath the track. At this point, I think it's clear that Vekoma dominates the family invert space, but S&S gave it a good shake, and what came as a result is quite decent overall. That said, with all the competition and minor flaws that Merlins Mayhem possesses, I find it unlikely we'll ever see another one of these built. Number 5, Pipeline the Surf Coaster at SeaWorld Orlando in Orlando, Florida. Usually weird, unique coasters end up at pretty obscure theme parks, but I think a lot of people will have the opportunity to experience a surf coaster because SeaWorld is a very mainstream location. In 2023, Bolliger and Mabillard came out with their first major innovation in years, redefining what it means to stand up on a roller coaster. Pipeline uses new technology which allows seats to move in relation to corresponding forces. The airtime riders experience as a result is so different from any other ride I've experienced, and it's why Pipeline is now one of my favorite roller coasters in the area. Number 4, Flying Turns at Knoebels in Eliasburg, Pennsylvania. The bobsled coaster is already a rare type of ride, there's not many left in the world. But building it from wood, that brings things to a whole other level of unusual. These wooden bobsleds were once very popular in the early 1900s, but that was before modern safety laws were introduced to the amusement industry. Knoebels took on the challenge of reintroducing this ride in the modern era, and though it took years of testing and modifications, Flying Turns was a big success when it opened. To this day, I think you could make the argument it's the most popular attraction at Knoebels, and it's one of my favorites as well. Number 3, Ice Mountain Bobsled at Enchanted Forest in Turner, Oregon. I really don't think there's another coaster that can even remotely compare to Ice Mountain Bobsled. Originally designed as an alpine slide, Enchanted Forest worked with an obscure design company to convert it into a roller coaster. Due to its surroundings and theming, clearances were an obstacle they needed to work around, and their solution was to make this weird attraction even weirder. Riders are surrounded by a cage that feels so incredibly bizarre to ride in, and honestly a little claustrophobic too. But overall, it still adds to the uniqueness of one of the most peculiar roller coasters I've ever ridden. Number 2, Cobra at Connieland in Lippersville, Switzerland. Immediately when I was coming up with this list, Cobra was one of the first rides I thought of because the ride model is one of a kind, and on top of that, it's got a one-of-a-kind coaster element. Manufactured by Pax, a Russian manufacturer known for their janky rides, Cobra is a shuttle loop design featuring a maneuver known as a scorpion tail. This is essentially a tight vertical loop and a heavily inclined spike that resembles a scorpion tail from off-ride. If that wasn't enough, riders have the ability to sit in backwards facing seats, making this already disorienting moment feel even crazier. Oh, and did I mention that its lift hill works because of a weight that carries the train to the top? You know, it's only fitting that a rich nation with all these well-regarded coaster manufacturers ended up with not a single one of their rides, and instead this pile of something. I wanted to place it at number 1, but there's one other attraction that took the edge for me, and it's one you might not have ever heard of before. This is Revolution at Bobbejaanland in Lichtart, Belgium. Where do I even begin with Revolution? It's the only Vekoma illusion coaster left in the world and takes place entirely indoors. On screen here is the layout if the walls were see-through. It's one insanely long spiral lift hill and a never-ending downwards helix around the perimeter of the building. All the theming Bobbejaanland implemented made this feel like an acid trip, and it was genuinely one of the most confusing coaster rides I've ever had, especially because of its most unusual feature that still blows my mind to this day, and that's that it has the longest coaster train ever on any roller coaster. I'm talking 2 riders across with 30 rows, culminating in a total of 60 riders per train. To put that into perspective, most B&M hypercoasters, which are known for being one of the most efficient coaster types out there, can hold 36 people on a single train. I don't know what the thought process was here because the ride doesn't benefit from having these weird features. It's just one of those unexplainable attractions that happens to be so much fun because of how stupid it is. But with that being said, thank you so much for watching this video counting down the top 15 most unique roller coasters I've experienced. I'd love to hear in the comments what your most unique credits are and which ones are on your bucket list. If you enjoyed today's content, feel free to drop it a like and subscribe to Coaster Dash so you don't miss any content like this in the future. Until next time, I'll see you all very soon. Bye guys.